Good morning, everyone. I am Dorothy Taylor of Chiron Astrology, and I'm here with Emmeline Muldoon from
Hi,
Emmeline's.
everyone.
So we decided that we wanted to do a video describing Saturn through the houses. Saturn is getting ready to move into Pisces on March 7th, and he'll be in Pisces from March 7th, 2023 to September 2025. And it's important. The placement of Saturn is important, one of the most important planets in your chart. And in transit, it has special effects on the sign that it's in.
hmm
And the last time it was in Pisces, it has a pretty long orbit. The last time it was in Pisces was 1993 to 1996. Prior to that, it was 1964 to 1967, and prior to that, it was 1935 to 1939. And the reason I bring this up is each trip Saturn makes around the chart is an evolutionary growth period for us. And so if you were born in the 30s, you have this will be the third time you have, maybe the fourth time you have Saturn in Pisces. If you were born in the 64 range, it is the third time. And if you were born in 1996, this will be the second time, or 93 to 96, this will be the second time. And you need to look at your chart specifically to find out where Saturn is in your natal chart. Today, we're just going to be talking about Saturn through the houses in each, and we have example charts of for you to look at to keep comparisons. So here we go. You ready to share the screen?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we're really excited because March is a very busy month. We've got Saturn moving into Pisces and lots of other astrology energy as well coming up. And we thought we would do this video to help people see where Saturn is moving through in their house and how they can work with that energy, because Saturn wants you to do the work. And I think it's really important to look at where is Saturn and where is Jupiter moving through. That's when I do a client reading, that's the first two planets I usually pull up and see, well, where are they moving around in the person's chart. So it's good to see where is Saturn going through for me, because it tells you where do I need to take responsibility and put the work in. And sometimes just the time in as well, because Saturn can also represent time.
So Emily mentioned earlier that a lot of her clients, when she talks about transiting Saturn, they'll look in their own chart, in their natal chart,
Yes,
to
that's
see
true.
where Saturn is, and that doesn't quite, it's not doing the trick. So when you're looking at your chart, locate the sign of Pisces, which is
hmm
this little like fishy looking thing, and then consider what house it's in. We determine the houses by your birth time.
hmm
And so the houses actually go around counterclockwise, and they start at 1 and they end at 12. Um, so so we're going to start with house 1, Saturn in house 1 in Pisces.
Yeah, and you've done some really good work here. It's beautiful illustrations, because yeah, people do get, I think, really confused. They go, where's Saturn in my chart? And they look at where their natal Saturn is. And what we're talking about is Saturn is transiting into Pisces. So you have to look at your Pisces house. So what we've got here is two charts, a bi-wheel. We've used examples of well-known people's charts just to create these illustrations. Well, Dorothy has. She's done all the hard work. And then we've put just put Saturn on the outside, so you can just see, oh, it's going through house 1 or it's going through house 2. So you can kind of see what it's doing for you. Hopefully that helps make it clearer.
So the first house is kind of everything on the bottom of your chart is kind of an internal process. It's this is the public and this is internal. So Saturn in Pisces and in the first house can be have you feeling a little withdrawn, because Pisces is a kind of a um, contemplative sign to begin with, and Saturn can be can place limitations and restrictions on what you feel like you can accomplish. But the goal of Saturn in any chart and in any house is to help you make your life more what you actually want it. So if you had a dream, something that you wanted to do with your life and you haven't done it yet, Saturn in the first house is a way to for you to go inside yourself and figure out how you can get there. It's not really a time for starting new projects, although
People do.
yes, and it is a time to do the work to
Hmm.
get ready for what you want to bring into your life.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of the times as Saturn crosses over that the ascendant line, the first point of the first house, that people do sort of think, what do I need to shed and what do I need to bring in? And that's fine, because a lot of the times we bring in a couple of things. I think when Saturn goes through the first house, we want to work on a few things, and just know that they don't, not all of them stick. But we're starting that new energy, and we're focusing on what do you need, what do I need, what do I really want, what do I want to start working on? And
Who
that's what
am I?
Saturn's. Sorry.
Who am I?
And who am I? That's a good one. Yeah.
And what goals do I have? It's
Yeah.
an opportunity for you to learn how to be your own disciplinarian, your own teacher.
Yeah.
Um, Instead of just going with, because when we're growing up, our parents are our symbol of authority, and we then go on to live our lives as if they're still in our lives and still making the decisions. So if this is the first time Saturn's going through your first house, or even the second or third, you may need to shed some of the ideas that you have about yourself
Hmm.
by adopting new ones, and making your life more your own.
Yeah.
So
And there can be a lot of turning your attentions inward during this time to reflect and think about what your needs are, and how you want to take responsibilities. In fact, it might feel like there's a lot of responsibilities that you have to take during this time.
also, if you're a Pisces, we've talked about Pisces ascendant, but if
Mhm.
you're a Pisces sun, which the sun is in Pisces right now, um, your Saturn is sooner or later going to be on your sun. He's going to hit all of these planets in this example chart in the next 3 years.
Mhm.
And when Saturn is conjunct in the same place that your sun is, that can feel like an especially intense time, because it's kind of shrouding your sun, putting a damper on your ability to express your energy fully. That could be through responsibilities, through any type of having to focus on something so much that you feel like you can't go and do your own thing.
Mhm.
But Saturn never leaves you empty handed. If you do the work, he rewards you. There is a reward at the end of any Saturn transit.
Yeah, if you do the work. It
The
wants you to work on the area it's going through. So that's why it's important to sort of see, where is Saturn going through in my life, because that's where I need to take the time and responsibility and put the work into.
Saturn is also opposite in the first house, opposite the seventh house of one to one
Mhm.
relationships. So, how do you come across in one to one relationships, and what do you really want in those one to one relationships? And that all has to do with who you are and what it is you want to do going forward.
Yeah.
And if you're shrugging your responsibilities, is that a word? Saturn will remind you they are there. Okay, so let's go to the second house, Saturn. And
Mhm.
this, interestingly enough, is the chart for Abraham Lincoln, who has an Aquarius ascendant, an Aquarius sun, and all of this energy in Pisces. And I find it interesting because Lincoln, of course, was abolished slavery, right?
Mhm.
And so he was real big into group dynamics
Yeah.
and completely changed them. And so Saturn here is in Abraham Lincoln's second house. Um, and the second house is about values,
Mm-hmm.
about your self esteem, it's about your own self worth. But really, what it's focusing on is what do I value? If that's material possessions, you're going to find out they become something you have to pay a lot of attention to.
Mm-hmm.
If it's your self-esteem, if you're not holding yourself fully, which hopefully when you had Saturn here in the first house, you developed an awareness of who you are and what you want, and that has an effect on your value system. And so now you get to focus on your value system. And the value system, if you've adopted someone else's value system in your subconscious mind, that's going to have an effect on how you feel about who you are and your self-worth, because you kind of feel like an imposter because that's not who you are. Those values don't match you. And this is a time for you to go in and examine your own value systems and begin to bring those values into your life, to live them.
Yeah, you've been doing the work when it's been going through the first house for the last 2 years, and now it's going through the second house for the next, well, it's till 2026, isn't it? It's time to put the actions in to get those dreams going, and building on the dream, and also sometimes it's restructuring what's important to us in terms of our possessions or our finances. Like some people, when they have Saturn going through the second house, they're working on it, building their income, or they're working on restructuring their finances. But try to avoid, like, I think, if you get a fear over your income or your fear over your finances and let it take over a bit too much, it's not going to be like the best course of action here. I think what you have to do is don't get too wrapped up in the money matters, and just sort of like try and focus, structure it all so that it's working well for you, but you're not sitting there like worrying too much, if that
And
makes sense.
this house is a perfect example of the effect that Saturn has on Pisces.
Mm-hmm.
Pisces is kind of whatever, whatever. They don't pay attention to anything in detail. And so you may have neglected this part of your life, your personal
Mm-hmm.
resources, your self esteem, which a lot of Pisces do not have that much of a self esteem, which is an issue in itself, right? So if you
Yeah.
don't have an ego, then you just let people do whatever. So Saturn's there to help you to discipline that area of your life that you haven't paid much attention to or paid as much attention to. And so this can be a lack of self-worth, and
Mm-hmm.
Saturn is going to, that may become emphasized in your life so that you can learn what your self-worth is, and that you have, there's a reason for an ego. I used to not think there wasn't a reason for an ego, but there's a reason we all have egos. They help us succeed. So,
And a lot of the Pisces energy is about is about learning boundaries.
mhm.
And that's what Saturn go through Pisces is about, because Saturn is about boundaries and restrictions, and Pisces is doesn't really know that yet. So, maybe you need to set some boundaries for your personal space for when Saturn's going through the second house.
Are we ready for the next one?
Yeah. Saturn in the third.
Okay. So Saturn in the third house is about communications, our local environment, the people, our neighbors, all the people right around our environment, the people
Yeah.
we interact with regularly. And Saturn in this house is going to help us learn how we are perceived and how we perceive the world, which is interesting given that we've gone through the process of learning who we are and what we are. We've adjusted our value systems, right? And so
Mhm.
our local environment then becomes a little
Yeah.
bit different. Our perceptions become different. And our communication style starts to change. So, how do we get across to people in our local environment, our siblings, the neighbors, the clerk at the local store? How do we get along with them now that we've changed?
Yeah, yeah, we've been putting the work in, and now we're, this is the structuring of your how your mind is operating on a day-to-day like basis, and how you are within your, your day-to-day life within the environment around you. So it's putting it all into practice. And you know, my first ever teacher, Jim Delacolle, always mentions, when Saturn goes through this third house, we can find it's getting to the bottom of the chart. So it's like it's a low energy. And sometimes when I'm doing readings, I speak to people about this Saturn going through the third house. It can feel like you are really figuring out now, what do you want around you in your life? What do you want your day-to-day life to be? And sort of restructuring that part. So it can feel a little bit unsettling in a way, because you're, well, I don't want this anymore and I don't want that. So what do I want it to look like going forward? Is it really a time to think about what you want around you at that time?
And I think that's a really important point. We have gone through these first two houses, and we're getting ready to cross over to the fourth house when Saturn is in
Mhm.
the third. And the fourth house is the deepest part of our emotional well-being.
Yeah.
And so Saturn coming into the third house can be feel depressive, like it's very hard to communicate with people and get our new awareness out. But that's because we're still in the internal part of the process. We are in the learning phase
Hmm.
of who we are and what is important to us. And how we perceive the world has a lot to do with how we feel about ourselves and how we feel about the people around us, and what how we move going forward, with the choices we're going to make going forward.
Yeah.
Okay, Saturn in the fourth house.
Yep. This is very important when Saturn crosses that the um the IC as well. That's, we have four sensitive points of the chart, and Saturn going over into the fourth as it just crosses over, it's crossing that very sensitive line. And that's the real inner part of us, whereas the midheaven is what other people see, and our reputation, the IC, is like the stuff that we keep within, and our intimate feelings and emotions. So with Saturn crossing over that point, it is a um very important time. Obviously it will do that every 29 years. So it's really focusing on your personal, your domestic, your home life, and any areas that you need to work on within that.
And your emotional stability. You may find that you have extra responsibilities at home, which of course
Yeah.
affects work, right? You may have difficulty with your house structure, like you have a lot of maintenance to do on your actual physical home. Use anything that comes up for you as a opportunity to look inside and see where your emotional state might need to be changed or updated or restructured, to be able to move forward with everything you've learned up in the first three houses.
That part of our chart also can represent, our roots, our parents, our heritage. So sometimes I see with clients that they're taking responsibility for their parents at this time. It might be that they need to help them out, or their parents are moving, selling their childhood home, or they're having to work with them in some way to help take care of them. So sometimes it is, taking care of your parents, or, actually just working at home, taking care of your children, but sort of work to do within the home. And also because this is the 7-year point from when Saturn's crossed over the ascendant, there can be things that you were thinking about 7 years ago that now you're saying, things that you started or were thinking about doing, that now you're revising them and changing them, or just finishing up with them.
or putting a structure around them so that you can
Yeah.
accomplish what you wanted. Um, so being opposite the 10th house, this house has an effect on, and you know, you guys notice this is a circle, right? So every house has an effect on other houses, but this is will directly involve something to do with this public reputation. So maybe work. But this is when you're going to get a chance to bring all of this out and restructure your home environment, your emotional environment,
Hmm.
so that you can begin to bring this, as Emmeline mentioned, this is the first 7 years. This is the next 7 years of Saturn going through these houses. Start to bring that out and share it with people.
Yep.
So Saturn in the fifth.
Oh, Grace Kelly's chart. That's beautiful. That's a pretty chart to have. Sorry, I'm just distracted
Yep,
by
she's
the
Scorpio.
yeah. So the inner wheel for this example is Grace Kelly, and we're looking at obviously Saturn is moving through the fifth house. It's a great illustration.
So I tried to pick charts that would, famous people that would illustrate their ascendant.
Hmm. Yep.
And Grace Kelly certainly had a lot of sex appeal. She married a prince. She, you know,
Hmm.
was very deep. She wasn't a superficial person. And Scorpios can be very deep. They're often pretty,
Yeah.
beautiful. And Saturn in the fifth house is
Hmm.
the fifth house is about creativity. It's about self-expression, expressing who you are. And Saturn is going to help you work on your presentation techniques, which, you know, self awareness for me is I know that I need to work on presentation technique. And so when Saturn gets my fifth house, I'll be paying a lot of attention to that.
um, yeah. So with the fifth house as well, we could think about children. So sometimes when Saturn is moving through the fifth house, if you have children, then it might feel like you're spending a lot of time around your children or putting the time into working with them. Um,
Or you could have trouble with fertility.
uh, yeah, trouble working on having the children. Sometimes there's love affairs with the fifth house, so it might feel like well, you know, time Saturn is older people as well, so maybe love affairs with a different um age to someone who's different age to different generation. But it's also a creativity house, and it's what we birth. Like literally we can birth our children, we can birth our work babies, we can have our ideas. So with Saturn going through the fifth house, I think it's a really good important time to look at planting the seeds, because what it's doing is I think this is getting you ready for when Saturn gets up to the 10th house, where you're getting the recognition for your work. This a lot of times when I have people coming for readings and I see all Saturn's going through the fifth house, I like to tell them, like, what are you working on right now? Because your ideas, how you're growing your work, what you're putting your efforts into, you know, you're at the beginning of a big cycle here. So it can often be people get ideas about a company or a business or a startup or something that they want to create during this time. So pay attention to those ideas.
So and they have to put the work in.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Um,
Don't just think about it.
Saturn, the fifth house is also about fun. That's why it's fun love affairs, about
Yeah.
fun and playing with your children, right? So you can even think of this as going through your inner child. Saturn is trying to discipline your inner child, which is all about creativity. Um, but it's not a lot of fun. So this is when you have to put the nuts to the bolts to get your creative idea birthed into the world, including children. And so Saturn going through the fifth house is not a lot of fun,
Hmm.
but it can be once you accomplish what you're trying to create. There's huge reward when all of the work is done.
Yeah.
So, a Libra ascendant, Mahatma Gandhi, was a Libra.
Hmm.
And he has, right now, he's no longer alive, I don't think. Hmm.
This is chart for 2006.
Yeah. Oh, well. It's still a Libra ascendant and it's still
It
behind.
is. It's perfect illustration for a Libra
Yeah.
ascendant. So, yeah. So a Libra ascendant right now, you have Saturn going through your sixth house. So, when Saturn was going through the fifth for the last 2 years, you've been thinking about maybe the ideas, the project, the creation. Now it's putting in the work for that. I often say for my clients, when Saturn's going through your sixth house, there's not enough hours in the day. Like 9 to 5 does not have enough time anymore. It's busy. It's more like 9 till 9. You're just, your day-to-day life becomes very intense, very busy, and you're putting in the work for a reason. So, it's good to know when you look at astrology, this is a transit, this is not forever. And I'm putting in this work because it's important to what I want to do and where I want to go.
Saturn in the sixth house is about disciplining your daily life. You may feel overburdened by all the responsibility you have every day. It just
Mhm.
never seems to stop, which is the overburdened portion. You don't feel like you can walk away from your responsibilities. There's always something to be done, which is the 9 to 9 instead of 9 to 5.
Yeah.
But the sixth house is about competency. And so Saturn being in the sixth house is going to raise your level of competency beyond belief.
Mhm.
People will be looking at you and seeing how hard you're working, and they will notice that you seem to be able to accomplish a lot more in the same time that someone else is it's taking longer, right? Because
Yeah.
you are disciplined enough to do that, and with competency. Sixth house wants competency. Saturn wants productivity. So, competence, productive, work daily, work life. This is also about your health. So, this discipline can also be demonstrated by how you respond to a health challenge, right? Maybe you finally start exercising. Maybe you have to monitor your blood sugar and eat correctly, those sorts of things. But again, as Emmeline said, this doesn't last forever. So, along with work responsibilities, you may have some personal health responsibilities you need to deal with, right? So, the
Yeah.
idea is just to discipline yourself between those two things.
Yeah, and putting in the structure around your health because, the sixth house is habits and routines. So it could be, I know that I need to get in the habit of exercising every morning, maybe. So, that's what Saturn wants you to do, it wants you to take the responsibility
And
and
discipline,
discipline.
responsibility.
Not too many Girl Scout cookies.
Yeah, no. Except for now, if you need to, you need to go out there and sell them.
Yeah, like I'm doing right now.
Yes. Um, so, Saturn in the seventh house.
Well, this is a big one because this is just like you were saying earlier, Dorothy, like this, Saturn, when it's below the horizon, it's all the internal work. And now it's coming above for the first time in like 14 years. So it's finally all the stuff you've been doing for the last 2 years with Saturn going through the sixth house. People are starting to see it a lot of the time and they go, "Oh, you've been doing this and you've been doing that." And you're like, "Yeah, I've been doing it for years." But people are now starting to see it because it's now being recognized and seen because it's come above. It's no longer internal, you see.
If you look at the chart and you notice where the pie pieces are, this is the house of I am. This is the house of I relate. So this
Mhm.
is the house of the individual. This is the house of one to one relationships. And
Yeah.
this is literally a mirror for this house. So your relationships, remember I mentioned earlier, Saturn's desire is to give you what you want, give you what you really want or what is right for you, not
Yeah.
somebody else's idea. And so you've changed going all the way through here, and now your relationships need to fit the person you're becoming. not only do you start recognizing that you want different things in your relationships, but other people start recognizing that you are not the same person. And this is about a 14-year span. Um,
Yeah.
and so, it's a long time before you start trying to express this new you in your one-to-one relationships. Not like in the third house where it was just your local community, your local network, and talking to your spouse in your house, but this is about the relationship itself.
Yeah. It's putting the time into the effort into the relationships.
If you were
Um,
single, you could meet an older person
yes, yeah, that is true. Yeah.
and have a pretty good relationship with them,
Mhm.
because they're probably more disciplined than
Yeah.
you, because you're younger. And so they could give you a sense of safety and security. Saturn can give you a sense of safety and security when you do the work, and this older person could give you a sense of safety and security.
Yeah. So a lot of the times we do, when it gets to that point, what were you thinking about changing from 7 years ago from what you started the 7 years before then? So going back the 14 years, often what can happen is this can be the end of what was going on like 14 years ago, because at the 7 year point, you maybe readjusted or restructured it, whereas now it's okay. When it crosses that line, the descendant, now it needs to change, now it needs to break away. Very often when Saturn's going through the seventh house, it can be a difficult time for a marriage or a partnership, because it's like, well, now we need to put the work in. And sometimes if you put the work in, it's not working, you can decide actually it needs to break away and change. But that's not to fear it. Don't fear Saturn, because I just had Saturn go through my seventh house for the last two and a half years. And I was thinking, how is that going to work for me, knowing that you got to work on your relationships, and I'm married. And actually what I noticed is that because Saturn also rules time, is that I didn't really have any time with my husband over the last couple of years, because he's been working like crazy. So it's like, you're having to put the work in for one reason. So for me, it's because there was not a lot of time together. So you're having to think about putting in the work and the time when you do have time together. So it could come up in that scenario as well. It could be that aspect. Literally, it could be time constraints. It could be you're taking responsibility because you've been working on the children when it's been going through the fifth house, and you haven't put time into your relationship, and now is the time to put the time into your partner. So you could think about it like that as well.
And that's a good point. If there's anything you've been ignoring
Mhm.
or pushing aside that's not working in your relationship, Saturn going through the seventh house is a time to um, put things right.
Yeah.
Responsibility for whatever role you have in the issue, and put it right. Do what you can to correct things, right?
Yeah.
However, it could be that you do have to end things, and that's
Mhm.
okay, because Saturn is there to tell you, okay, it's time. This is not going to work. It's time. And Saturn will tell you that about a lot of things. He will tell you it's time to end things, or it's time to start something new.
Yeah.
Saturn is a wonderful planet for teaching you really who you are and what you want.
Yeah, it does. It does. It sort of opens your eyes to what you need and what you want.
The other thing that can happen with Saturn going through the seventh house is you could make your relationship official.
Oh yeah, that's so true. Yeah, yeah, you
So,
could. Yeah,
along with the
yeah, the
breakup, you actually,
commitment.
yeah, make a commitment.
Mm,
And so that's kind of cool to see that. And that
yeah,
was
that's
the person older in the relationship, they could be that kind of person that wants a commitment. And a lot of
or
people.
maybe you begin a working project with your partner as well. Like there's literally work that you do together during that time.
Mhm. And this also applies, just so we're clear, this applies to partnerships of any kind. It can be a business
Yes.
partnership, a personal relationship, but it's people that you relate to all the time. And they're asking you um, to take responsibility for your role in the relationship.
Yeah.
Now, in that, you're also going to ask them to take responsibility for their role in the relationship, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, and it's about expectations. Maybe you had expectations of your partner that were unrealistic,
Mm-hmm.
and that's it's time to come to terms with that. And Saturn is big on making us come to terms with how we have structured our world, what we think things should be. And there is no should. It is or it isn't. And you can make it more of what you would like or not. Either way, the should, eliminate the word should from your vocabulary. Because if something should be a certain way, it would already be that way.
Yeah.
That's a little deep. I don't know if anybody gets that. The word should leads to expectations, and it shows you where your expectations lie, right? Okay, you
Yes.
ready?
Yeah. Okay. Into the eighth house. The eighth house is an interesting one, I think, when Saturn goes through here. I mean, there's so many meanings, I think, attached to the eighth house that we probably have to just go through all of them to give people an idea of what they could be working with. But
And that was
ultimately,
exactly how I was going to open up the eighth house. This
oh,
is an
there we
interesting
go.
house.
Because it's like when we do a reading, that's probably what we both say to our clients. Like we're going to have to go through a lot of readings to get to a lot of house meanings to get to the one that's going to be applying to you right now. So for the next 3 years, it's, this is the house of other people's money, other people's values, sex, death, taxes, and also the house of transformation. So endings and beginnings,
And emotional attachment.
Yeah. So that you see, there's a lot of things that the eighth house holds there.
So the one that most people focus on though is the death, sex, and taxes.
Yeah.
And it also is inheritances, that kind of thing. Um,
Yes.
so there's a ton of stuff in the eighth house, but because it's a water house, it's normally ruled by Scorpio. It all of that is about an emotional attachment of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
And so when Saturn enters the eighth house, you could need to examine your emotional attachments to things like your partner's money, you
Yeah.
know, money you share with someone else. It may be hard to get a bank loan while Saturn's in the eighth house. You just don't seem to have the access to other people's resources that you normally would. So you have to work harder. You don't meet the guidelines for this or that, or your credit score is not high enough, that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah.
but there can be some emotional attachment to past emotional experiences down here when we had in the home or that we had out, like a sexual, um, being sexually abused or, that sort of thing. And Saturn is going to make you want to deal with that so that you can let that go and move on. So that emotional attachment, it doesn't define you anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely the scope and the power for transformation within your emotions. And the other thing I would say is try not to get yourself in a position if you are in a partnership where you're relying on the partner for your income, because it might be that your partner's income is restructuring during this time. So think about that as well. The other thing that I see come up a lot is, like you've already said, inheritance, which can be a thing that you're working on, because probate is not a fun time a lot of the time. So it could be putting in the work into that, but also putting in the work to debt, like cleaning up debt, money that you've got that you owe to other people. So how are we going to clean that up,
So that was the reason for the credit score kind of thing.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that you pay attention to what you share with others, and that's emotionally, and secrets could come out. That's one of the things that why I brought up the past emotional attachments to like a traumatic event. um, you're sharing that still with someone else if you're keeping their secret. Hand it back to them. State it out loud, whatever it was, and hand it back to them. There's a lot of work to be done with emotional attachments, and people feel freer to live their life the way they want once they release negative emotional attachments. There's a lot of endings with Saturn in the eighth house.
Yes, definitely. It's a big time in your life where you'll see, I think, endings more than the other houses.
But what you're doing is letting go of things you no longer need
Yes.
so that you can go on and accomplish the things that you want to accomplish. So you've started sharing yourself out in the world, this new version of you. And about every 30 years, we have these new versions, 28 to 30 years, we have these new versions of ourselves come out. Um, at what age that starts, at what age Saturn goes across the ascendant is different for everyone depending on their ascendant.
Mm-hmm.
But everyone brings out a new version of themselves. So, the kid goes off to college, becomes an adult, starts taking care of themselves. Then they go through their work years, and then they have grandchildren. They become the elder, just a different role in life. And so, what you're reaching for by letting go of these emotional attachments is to let go of the previous life and get ready for the next one. Like, literally start living the next one in an outward way. So, you contemplated all of these things, worked on them, worked on yourself, and now you need to work on the outer world acceptance of who you really are in the role that you have now. That was a lot.
Yeah. So, well, it's a lot. The eighth house is a lot to have Saturn go through.
The interesting thing though is because of so much being contained in the eighth house, it literally affects the entire chart and affects our ability to function
Mm-hmm.
properly. The other thing is you might find you owe more money than, like, to the federal government and taxes.
Oh, yeah, taxes is another one.
Yeah, you may feel like you're in debt too much, or you have to pay higher taxes, or all of these things are possible in the eighth house. But again, remember, it only lasts until, you said 2026, didn't you?
Yeah.
So that too shall pass. Now, anywhere Saturn is, that too shall pass, but you need to do the work while it's there, or it won't pass and you'll have to deal with it the next time he comes around there. You ready?
Busy yourself. Yeah. Busy yourself putting in the work.
Yes. So Saturn in the ninth house.
So this is what I often say, you're preparing for the 10th house this time during this period. The ninth house also has quite a few meanings, I think, as well, that you need to explore and look at which one is relevant for me. What am I, working on or focusing on here? So, there can be the higher mind, mastering a subject, learning. This is the teacher aspect, it's you've gathered the knowledge and now it's implying and really applying it, not implying it, applying it to what you've been studying and what you want to learn and where you want to go, and getting you ready for when it moves over to the career parts of your chart. So it is a lot of preparation, I think, in this part of the chart. It can also relate to education, like as in studying, maybe studying more, building upon your knowledge. It can also relate to like long distance traveling. Some people during this time have to go and work abroad, or they want, for some reason, they want to go and learn something about a different place, a different culture. That can come up as well.
So the ninth house is also about your worldview.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And what you think of the world tells you what you're going to be able to do when you get to the 10th house, your career, that kind of stuff. And that's the reason this higher education is important, getting a degree. Saturn can represent getting a degree, so that you have something to show when you get here. The foreign travel, learning about other cultures, about other people, that all broadens your perspective on the world. And so when he gets to the 10th house, we'll go ahead and go there. And Saturn's in the 10th house, you could be seeing rewards there for all of the hard work so far, to the point of you get some sort of job title or you get some sort of professional responsibility.
Yeah, this is a real big one, this one.
It is a big one,
Mm-hmm.
but it does cover a lot less than the 8th and the 9th house, because it is about
Yep.
either career or your public image, your
Yep.
public persona. And so, Saturn can see you feeling very disciplined. The mirror image of the 10th house is the 4th house. So you could over concentrate on work, like to the exclusion of everything else. You could feel so burdened at work that you don't pay attention to your home life, your relationships, your inner world, who you are. But it is also, you get noticed as an authority figure when Saturn is in your 10th house. And that's
Yeah.
from all of this other the growing pains that you've been through.
Yeah, it's a real time of I think it's you're reaping the harvest for the hard work you've been doing, especially like when it was down in the 5th house. And you think that Saturn crossing over the midheaven is every 29 years. So this is a point you've been working up towards for a long time. And, if you haven't been doing the work, this might not be a time where you get the rewards, because Saturn will say, well, you didn't put in the work to the areas where you were meant to. So now let's go about restructuring what you want your career to do and what you should be working towards. So sometimes it can come up in that way as well.
And a good example of that is a kid who quits college.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
He didn't accomplish the higher learning that he needed to get that job, or to
Yeah.
have that job title. So if you don't do the work, you don't get the
Yeah,
reward
exactly. And that's
would
what I
have.
always like to tell people. Like, it's coming up to this point. So if you're putting in the work and you get to that point, you're going to get the rewards and the accolades that can go with, oh, look, you're recognized for the work you've done. But if you haven't been putting it in, then it's going to be, well, now we need to restructure how you're going to have your career, or what you're going to do with your life, and how you're going to be seen by others. And sometimes I think people are not really aware that they're not putting in the work. And so when Saturn gets up there, that's when they go, oh, okay, what am I going to build? What am I going to work? How am I going to proceed with a career? Because now it's time to take responsibility for it.
And that includes even their own self-esteem down here, where they had the value system, choosing a path that fits with your value systems, and creating or becoming aware enough within yourself to
Mhm.
know your worth, and choosing a path that speaks to that. But also, this is where the individual meets the world, and where your relationships meet the world, and where your home meets the world. And so, the individual meeting the world, your job is not you. What you do for a living, your public reputation is not you, right? It needs to speak to your inner world, but it's not, that's not it. What other people think about you is not you. Your relationships also have to work with whatever career path you've chosen, and so does your home life. Do you make enough money to afford to be in a relationship and your home, right? So there's a lot of stuff that goes into the 10th house, but that's because of how it's related to the rest of the chart. The 10th house is the most prominent house in the chart. It's also the final um, 7 years of Saturn before he crosses over the first house again.
Yeah.
So, so Saturn in the 10th house starts, becomes the point of accomplishment, success or failure, what you've accomplished, getting known for what you've accomplished, but it also begins the letting go to move on to the next phase, the next 28 years, right? So
Yes.
each quarter of this chart lasts about 7 years. And that's the reason we say 28 to 30, but that's because it can stay in a sign shorter or longer, and you never quite know until you get there. So once we've accomplished ourselves, we reap the rewards of all the work that we've done. Then we want to move on to the 11th house, which is about our social networks and even includes all of humanity, our family, our groups that we belong to, like minded people. And if we've accomplished a lot and have a good reputation, right,
Yeah.
then friends come out of the woodwork. We just have people coming at us all the time, and they love to be around us, and we get to decide who we want to have around. So if a group doesn't work for you that you belong to, you may stop your association with them. You also are concerned with the groups, how you communicate with these groups, how you interact with people on a group level.
Yeah, and it sometimes I think when the Saturn goes through the 11th, we are building new groups. Actually, I want to try. I often get people. I do an astrology class once a month, and I'll get people come to the class for the first time, and they've got Saturn coming through their 11th. They're exploring new groups. They're looking for new friendship circles in ways that maybe they haven't done before. Especially if you've got Pisces there on the 11th. It's like connecting in a different way, or bringing in new relationships. So this can also happen at work as well. This isn't necessarily just the friends we hang around with, it's the groups that we form at work, in the office, and so forth as well. So, restructuring and rebuilding those communities.
And we talked before about how Pisces is rather undisciplined.
Yeah.
And Saturn is coming in saying, okay, it's time to put your friendships, your social networks into focus, so that they represent more of what you want in your larger environment. That is the this will be when it gets about 15 degrees of Pisces in the 11th house, is when we reach a turning point, and that'll take a little while, a year and a half or so. We reach a turning point. We are halfway through this final phase then. And so
Yes.
once we reach that halfway point in the final phase, we start shifting into the 12th house and getting ready for Saturn to come across the first house cusp. So, one of the things that I suggest is taking responsibility for the groups you belong to. You may have some responsibility in the group, but if you do, recognize that you have influence. You have, and you are considered an authority figure, and so with that comes responsibility. If you take a leadership role within a group, you are responsible for what you lead them to do or not do. And the reason I bring this up is Pluto's about to move into Aquarius. And when
Yes.
Pluto moves into Aquarius, our social environment is going to change significantly. And it may take years, it may take, it may happen right off the bat, but our social environment is going to change. And so, how do you respond to your social environment? Your friends, your neighbors, the wider world, other countries, you know, being the citizen of a country is a group. So, how do you represent who you are in this ever changing social environment? And we're going to do a video of Pluto through the houses as well.
Yeah, that'd be I think we need to do that. March is a busy month, and people yeah, again, if you want to feel the shift, this is a big enough shift, just Saturn moving signs, but we've got Pluto as well, so
Right. And
we'll
Pluto
do
moves
that.
about March 16th. Is that right?
I think Pluto's towards the end of March, isn't it? The 24th, 27th. The Saturn's at the beginning, and then Pluto's at the end.
Okay. So those are in astrology for these slow movers, they're happening
Mhm.
simultaneously.
Yes, exactly.
So, Saturn, it takes 28 to 30 years to go around the chart. Pluto, it takes 260, 248. So for them to both change signs at the
In the
same
same
time,
month.
yeah,
Mhm.
that's kind of, and also Mars finally reaches the point of ending his post retrograde. So that March is going to be a busy, fast month for change.
Yes. And
Okay.
Mars will finally move signs as well. So March is huge. Everyone just know March is huge.
Yes. So Saturn in the 12th.
Yeah, this is a and having a Pisces 12th house as well. This is the completion of everything. This is the ending house. So you're working on finishing up everything that you've been working on. But also, I think this is the house that's hidden away. So a lot of times you're going within, you're withdrawing, and you're working on yourself. I think sometimes you can work on your mental health as well when it's going through the 12th house. But just know that if you feel like you want to withdraw or you want to be alone, that's not a bad thing. That's actually what Saturn's wanting you to do. It's wanting you to take that time for you.
It's a time when you're looking back over the last 28 years and getting to grips with what were successes or failures. Not necessarily judging the successes or failures, just the reality of, did this work, did that not work? Not, you did this wrong. But what could you learn from your last 28 years of experience? What do you
Yeah.
want to let go of and leave behind? And what do you want to take with you into the next? And I don't know about you guys, but when I worked hard and I go back and think about what I was doing during that time without judging it, um, I learn a lot about myself from how I reacted to certain things, what I accomplished successfully, what I failed at. I learn a lot from that time of going in and just looking at my life the way that, if somebody was reading it in a book.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like a time of review, a time of thinking about and getting ready for the restructure that's going to happen when Saturn crosses the ascendant, and you say goodbye to what you don't want and start things anew. But this is that time of going within and working out what's really important to you. And sometimes, the 12th house, like I say to my clients when it's a 12th house transit, this is the stuff you're not going to talk to me about. This is the stuff that you're not going to talk to your friends about, because you really keep this down in there. So I might be telling you this and you're just hearing it, but you're not going to acknowledge it because you don't want to discuss it with anyone else. It's very, very raw, and it's very internal.
It may even be things that you've hidden from yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And Saturn is asking you to examine that deepness, that stuff that's back in the background that you respond to, but you don't necessarily know why you're responding. For instance, let's say you walk into someone's house and you smell a perfume and it brings back a memory of, oh, your mom wore that perfume, right? That's the kind of stuff that's so deep you respond to it, but you're not sure why you responded to it. So sounds, smells, they can all bring back this kind of hazy memory. It's also the 12th house is the subconscious mind. It's the unconscious mind. It's where we get rid of our karma. It's a house of letting go and letting God. So Saturn's there to help you let go of the things you need to let go of, and restructure how your subconscious mind works, so that you can let go of the thoughts and beliefs that don't help you, that are in your subconscious mind that are not helping you. Maybe you overeat as a protective mechanism, so you gained weight, right? But you don't know why you gained all that weight. You exercise all the time. Well, it's the subconscious thought of, I need to buffer myself. I need to create some distance between me and other people, right? And that's a common problem that people have, but they don't realize that that's what the problem is. So it's all in their subconscious mind. So then their body just naturally puts on the weight because they need protection. Um, Anything else about the 12th house that came up for you?
Sometimes I recommend to people when they've got Saturn going through there, it's putting in the work on all the stuff you've just described. So maybe that is some type of therapy, maybe that's meditation, but putting in the work. Don't just ignore these feelings that are coming up. If they're coming up, try and process them and work through them.
Yeah, it can be a lot about the past, because it
Yeah.
is looking at the last cycle, but also any other cycle you had. It The 12th house, some astrologers consider this 12th house to be a karmic house, like um, past life type of stuff. And so, you could be even letting go of something that happened in a previous lifetime that is still affecting you and helping you to. So, when stuff is in the subconscious mind, we make decisions based on information we don't even have access to. We don't understand where it's coming from, you know?
Yeah.
Like if somebody says their favorite color is blue, why is your favorite color blue? I don't know, it just is. Well, somewhere in their subconscious mind, they have a connection to the color blue.
Mhm.
And that would be good to find out why. No, I don't think you need to figure out everything. But do let whatever comes up, it's your responsibility to deal with it effectively,
Yeah.
so that you can let it go and move on to the next thing. Okay.
Let it go so you can grow.
Let it go so you can grow. Well, that is Saturn through all of the houses. And we hope you guys have enjoyed this. We certainly enjoyed doing it.
Yeah, hope you found it helpful. It's always nice to know where your Saturn is, because it wants you to put the work in. Like we said, don't be scared of it, don't fear it, put the work in and you will get the reward. So it's good to know. So it's good you put the time in to figure out where your Saturn is.
And Pisces looks like this. I don't know on every, what color it is on every astrology system, but it is that kind of fishy thing. It's a two fish. So,
Yeah.
and it'll be somewhere just before or after Aries. In this, it's the 12th sign, so it should be before. So if you can find Aries, the horns, you can find Pisces. Anything else? Oh, Saturn is this little H with a cross at the top. So if you're looking at a system where you can see the transits, you can follow him along as he goes through Pisces, and he will be in Pisces until 2026 from March 7th.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the Saturn transit of Pisces.
Oh, you are? It's going to be interesting because it's like a contradiction of energy, isn't it?
It is.
Boundaries becoming important for things that you don't know how to put boundaries to, because Pisces is all about, like just using your intuition and letting go. And then suddenly Saturn is restricting that. But it will be interesting to see how it plays out.
So you mentioned earlier that the last time Saturn was in Pisces, they built a bridge under the water.
Yes, yeah, and in the 90s, the tunnel that connected the UK to the continent of Europe, France, it was, really huge task to do that, and it
And a
took
lot of
place.
hard work.
Yeah, it was yeah, and Pisces can represent the water, so working, building stuff within water. So we might see some more tunnels or bridges or structures within the water, or work within water, or cleaning up the oceans. That would be nice. That type of energy coming out during the next few years.
And that's a good metaphor for Saturn in Pisces, is some sort of structure. You're being given some sort of structure to help you navigate the water or the emotions of Pisces, because all the water signs are about emotions. So, some sort
Yeah.
of emotions, you're being given something that allows you to structure that energy, that Piscean energy. So look for that. Look for those little gifts. Oh, this is my boundary. This is my limit. Oh, this is my structure to float for a while. Because if you're direction also and time, if you're on the ocean, it's hard to even tell which direction you're headed in, and it's hard to make any gains or to see any land. So Saturn is bringing all of that in to give you some sort of direction, some sort of um, craft to be able to navigate all of this.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, great. Well, thank you. That was fun. Thanks
and
for all
thank
your
you
hard
all.
work.
Thank you all for being here.
Yes, thank you,
It
everyone.
is really fun to do these, and maybe we will do more.
Yeah, that'll be really good. And if you have any comments or questions, you can leave them and we'll put this on both of our YouTube channels and we can, get to you and help you understand something if you found it a bit confusing. Or
And
if you
please,
have your own ideas.
and please like and subscribe to our channel so you can see more of these videos. And we will see you next time.
Yes. Bye, everyone.